Are you guys ready to hear a story so fucked up? A story that so clearly denotes the fact that racism is alive and well in our country that even local Fox news stations covered it, and covered it well. It's genuinely that bad. The story's been going viral over the last few days, so some of you might already be familiar with it, but if you're not, then, I mean, prepare to be horrified. Right now, a wealthy white couple, stands on trial for holding close to a dozen, I believe, black children as slaves. And before you ask, yes, here in America. It's a pretty horrible story. I already know the details of it, but I believe this news segment is probably going to break it down far better than I can, and he probably won't forget any details or anything, so I'm just going to let him speak, and I'll give my commentary on top of it. So I'll let him take it away. You know, when it's so fucked up and racist that even Fox condemns it, it's bad.
It's no secret how deep racism goes in this country. Yet somehow we're still stunned by cases like the one we're bringing you tonight. We begin with a case out of West Virginia. Gene Whitefeather and Donald Lance, a white couple, are accused of treating their 5 adopted children like slaves. We know for sure 3 are black, according to the indictment. Prosecutors say the children were also targeted and adopted because of their race. The pair was arrested last.
This is a big problem in America that I don't think a lot of people know about. There are so many really out of the way places. Country roads take me home to the place where they keep kids in their basement and feed them to gators in the South. I'm sorry, I got carried away there. But no, literally, like, there are places out there in the middle of the fucking nowhere in America where they, like, stuff like this fucking happens. America is fucking huge. I know that a lot of my viewers aren't Americans, so this is hard to really, like, factor in to an understanding of life here. But legitimately, like, there is so much just middle of nowhere in America, and God knows what horrors are happening deep in the American woods. There's a reason why Americans joke about how Europeans don't get how scary American woods are. It's not like that there's actually wendigos or monsters or shit like that, but because people who live deep out in the fucking woods can range from being the coolest people you've ever met in your life to, like, actual fucking monsters keeping children locked up in a shed. It happens. It has happened. It is happening right now.
According to the indictment, prosecutors say the children were also targeted and adopted because of their race. The pair was arrested last fall. This was after a wellness check turned into a reveal about the living conditions of the children. 2 of the children, 14 and 16 years old, were found living in a barn outside. Neighbors.
Like, I really think you guys gotta know, like, so many Americans have, like, vast amounts of land, and that's their private property. Where, like, if they're doing some shit like this, like, the police have to come for a wellness check for it to ever be discovered. Or one of the kids would have to, like, break out and run away. There's so many terrifying, like, you can call me a white girl for being into this stuff, but sometimes I listen to those true crime stories, like the real ones of, like, solved cases. And there was a really jarring one. A really jarring one where this girl, maybe 15 years old, 16 at the oldest, had managed to break out of a house. And she walked a few blocks, managed to get a cell phone, I guess. Maybe she stole it, and called the police. And it's the recording of the call she made to the police dispatch. And it's, like, very clear that despite her age, she's barely literate and capable of speaking English. And she's trying to tell the police where she came from and the situation that she's in. She was adopted, I believe, as were the other children that were in the house with her, and she was the oldest, and she broke out and got to a phone to call the police so that they could come help her adoptive brothers and sisters, who were all being tortured, pretty much. They were being malnourished. They weren't allowed to read or be given anything. That wasn't even Dead Giveaway. That Dead Giveaway is a completely different one, and Dead Giveaway happened in the middle of, like, Chicago or something, like a big city. Yeah, things like Dead Giveaway, that shit's fucking terrifying, dude. And it makes me wonder, like, there was a horror movie that was like the twist at the end of the horror movie is that it actually takes place in modern day, but the horror movie is is about slavery and like being a black person who's forced to be a slave under slavery and subjugated to like the treatment of being a slave. And then at the end of the movie, it's revealed this was all modern day. And it's just the far, far South where they're just doing a reenactment of slavery for their own like shits and giggles. And they kidnap like black people for it to reenact it and like drug them and like wipe their memory or something. I don't know all the details of the movie, but it's like, yeah, if you glaze this movie, I'll flog you. I've never seen the movie. I'm just describing like that could be real is my point, you know? Like America's so big and vast and there are places where that kind of shit could be happening. I think it's called Antebellum, yeah. Not Get Out. It is not Get Out.
Tipped law enforcement off. Deputies discovered there were limited resources in that barn. The teens only had a small porta potty, no running water, or a mattress. According to neighbors, the children were not allowed inside of the home, the main house, and had to do farm labor outside instead. Whitefeather denies the allegations and says the barn was simply a teenage clubhouse. Both Whitefeather and Lance are now behind bars.
I love that. Like such a like hand wavy response to we sent a wellness check and we found your fucking torture shack. No, it was just a clubhouse.
As they wait for a trial to begin September 9th. Joining us to talk about it here on The Factor Uncensored, we have with us parent David Settles, Todd Smith, the CEO of Regal Media, and trauma therapist Chow Nguyen. Glad to have you all on The Factor Uncensored. So, David, first of all, as a parent, hearing this story, and we have learned that the judge admonished them in court in another hearing saying,
This is a really good example of why homeschooling outside of very particular circumstances probably shouldn't be allowed. I was homeschooled for like the last stint of my education and it went well enough, but God, like the amount of stories you hear about religious fanatic cults, abusive like parents, etc., using homeschooling as a way of like separating their victim from getting help. Like these kids that are getting homeschooled and living in like trailers or even in some cases big ass houses in the middle of the country, there's no way they can get away from their family and A, learn that any way they're being treated might not be normal, or B, get help if they know it's not normal or good.
I've never in my life seen anything like this. Your bond was too
like racism is definitely a factor here, but I think it's also worth remembering that a pretty core part of conservative ideology is child abuse. Conservatives they love child abuse, from like the idea of just simply harming children being something they joke and like take glee in because they're evil, to the idea that like in some ways it is a positive thing for society to abuse your children. A lot of them talk about how we need to bring back bullying and bullying is necessary. You know, I you got to remember, like child abuse is a fundamental sort of cornerstone of conservative culture.
200,000 come back. It is now 500,000 each.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the judge did the right thing by increasing the bond. But as a parent, absolutely, it's downright deplorable, right? It's not even just disgusting, but it's purely evil at this point, right? And but to go back to the point about them raising the bond, you know, people have been talking about
Houston versus all y'all. Hold on, chat. I'm screenshotting it and sending it to somebody. My buddy Ethan lives in Houston and fucking hates it. I'm gonna get him that hat, and he's gonna be mad at me
about
for
the
it.
foster care system and adoption regulations and things like that. Chances are there wasn't an adoption agency or any foster care system involved in this case because they raised the bond with allegations of like human trafficking. So we don't even know how these kids ended up in their care in the first place.
We do know they were adopted, or they received their custody in Washington State and then moved to West Virginia. Were people wise? Were people getting
West Virginia, my bad.
concerned about what they saw in Washington, and that's why they moved?
West Virginia is like very country bumpkin. Like I feel now I'm not gonna shit talk who you're about to see, but when I say like God knows what the fuck is being done out there in like the deep places of American woods. Let me give you an idea of how like some people, and there's nothing wrong with this, but how some people voluntarily live deep in the American woods in the American South. Have you seen those old man living off-grid videos? This guy?
If the grid went down, how long do you think you could sustain out here?
Me personally, probably in
Like, this is the extreme end of things, but there are millions of Americans living in the far more moderate end of this sort of lifestyle.
definitely.
This is so cool. It's like a spaceship.
People's first thought is all the stuff they're going to have to give up. But I
This is
wanna
a nice-
focus it is
it's a
all
nice
the stuff
setup.
You're going to get. Fennel really good for digestion, and yarrow is good for wounds, and Echinacea everybody knows about. This was
got a
very
great
fun
garden.
project. It's the biggest machine that's ever been.
Like, there's nothing wrong with this. Like, this guy's great. Yeah, this dude gives you quests. Unironically, like, I'd do quests for this guy. But, like, my point being that, like, America is so fucking vast, and some people outside of it don't understand that, like, there are unique problems here like this. Like, weird country bumpkin families keeping children as slaves in their shack. Maybe dozens, if not hundreds, well, like 100+ miles from like the nearest big city, you know?
Move to West Virginia? That's a question we still have to explore.
Two things come to mind. The child welfare system, which is an institution that really needs some serious reform. There was talk about defunding the CPS and foster care
She's on
system.
point.
It's not there to protect the children in cases like this. That's a whole other issue. The institutions that are meant to support children can sometimes hurt them. And the
That's a very broad statement that could be, I don't know, maybe she's cringe. Hard to say.
The other thing I think about is the trauma that's instilled on these kids for a lifetime. We talk about something called adverse childhood experiences, neglect, abuse, poverty, unhealthy sanitary conditions, poor parenting. Those are things that can affect those children for a lifetime, that can create PTSD, anxiety, depression, poor relationships, poor job.
Yeah, unironically, Resident Evil 7 is not even an inaccurate depiction. Like, they could have done RE7 without the whole, like, they have mold that made them that way thing. Like, they wouldn't be able to regenerate, but, like, that shit's real. Like, properties in places where it's accurate. You haven't lived in the deep south. Like, you drive by houses while just going down, like, dirt roads in Florida where it's like, fuck, I don't want to know what's happened or is happening in that house. Because you can see a light is on, but it's decrepit, and you're like, someone lives there and is in there. I don't want to know what's happening in there. Like, you just drive on by. Me and my mom had a game where we just call them, like, murder houses. Like, how many murder houses will we pass when we drive through the rural areas, you know? And that was a little game me and my mom would play while driving in the car since I was a kid. How many murder houses? Because it's just a thing in the South. You pass so many, like, middle-of-the-woods murder houses.
Crime, those are very serious outcomes for those children.
And Todd, we've heard that the 16-year-old boy in this case reeked and had sores on his feet. It was so bad the neighbors could smell it.
It just, if you look at the images, it looked like an old school plantation. The shed, the barn looked like a slave shack. It's just, like David said, it's just evil. And to think in 2024, you still have people who see black people and children at that as property, you know, just to use for their own purposes.
Well, I mean, especially people see children as property, but yeah, his point is very, very strong. I think broadly, though, our culture views children as property in a very fucked way. Less so young boys, though. It's a very bizarre normalization of a creepy relationship dynamic that I noticed. It's going away, thankfully. Like, this is a problem that's kind of fizzling out. But you know, like the highly protective of their daughter dad, where it goes beyond just trying to like actually be a protective dad and goes into like controlling of like the daughter's life and sexuality and everything in a really weird way, where like the dad's just thinking about it too much and is way too obsessed with it. That kind of shit, that sort of like treating children like property, has been pervasive in our society for a very fucking long time. And I'm glad it's going away right now, but it's still a problem. Yeah, Lucky Otter, that's a very good example. Purity balls are a very good example. Ninja Knot is like confused, like, what are you talking about? But Lucky Otter knows exactly what I'm referring to, like purity balls, or like those what is it called? They're like, there's purity balls, and then there's also purity rings, where it's like a daughter and a dad will get matching rings that are supposed to be like a constant reminder to the daughter to not lose her virginity. Like, oh, a guy's asking you out, but look at your purity ring. Your father, you wouldn't want to upset your father, right? Before that, it was chastity cages, yeah.
And stuff like that. The only way to describe it is evil. This is for the first time in my being on this show. I'm just flabbergasted. I have really nothing to say about how this is, but this is why we should take racism seriously. This is why when people talk about certain things, we should listen to them, because it's so easy to fall back into the trap of yesteryear when things happen that were this atrocious. You know what I mean? It's people would do evil things to people, to innocent people. So we have to really be careful about.
One of my favorite responses, like, why should we need government regulation of like businesses and corporations? It's like, well, we know from history that they would literally keep us as unpaid slaves and punish us with beatings or death if we don't like work as hard as they want us to, if the government didn't keep them from doing that. Like, yeah, they do that. They did it. They did it to people before. Do you think if they could have like had millions more white slaves on top of that, they would have turned it down? Slavery wasn't just the racism. It was also the fact that it made money for the wealthy Southern plantation owners who had slaves. And it, like, modern day business owners, I mean, barring the sort of popularity of automation, which might like phase out the usefulness of slavery conceptually. But yeah, like, if you think that we don't need regulation today, don't you think these companies, without regulation stopping it, wouldn't literally keep you as a slave and treat you like chattel? Or chattel? Chattel? I don't know how it's pronounced.
You know, the race relations in this country and stuff like that, and so we won't fall back into that trap again.
And of course, we heard from the judge and prosecutors that these kids were targeted because of their race.
Yeah, and of course, you go back to like ancient Rome and stuff, they did slavery not really based on skin color, but based on what tribe or nation you came from. If you were conquered by Rome, you were likely to become a slave, and what kind of slave you would be depended, and the terms of your enslavement could be far more. Slavery is never good, but Roman slavery was arguably far less brutal and awful than the Atlantic slave trade. In a variety of ways, it was less brutal, but nonetheless, they still did slavery, and it very clearly shows that there is a desire among powerful people to subjugate others and force them to work themselves literally to death just so that they can see like a number go up in their personal income, you know?
This is why those parents went after them.
So that's why we need to take a serious look at the child welfare system. We don't know what happened to these kids, but did you know that only 15% of all cases in which children are taken away from their parents involve physical violence? A lot of them involve neglect. We're talking about maybe there's not enough food at the table, maybe they weren't clothed properly, maybe mom or dad had an addiction problem, things that stem from trauma. If we can address keeping families together and address things like poverty and prosperity and economic prosperity, maybe we can keep families together so we don't see these situations.
Well, another thing, but you can't say it on a Fox network, is if we promote contraception and sex education, fewer people will have babies before they're like physically in a position where they can. Like, if you're addicted to drugs, chances are you're not going to decide to see a pregnancy to term if you have the option not to. And so you're probably not going to, if you get an abortion, you're probably not going to end up being a drug addict mom. Obviously there are like greater problems to solve here, but like, yeah, that's also a factor, you know, like a lot of people who get pregnant and have kids didn't really have much of a choice in it, and they weren't in much of a position for that situation to begin with, right? And they would change it if they could. Sometimes. Not always, but the option should be there.
Something has to seriously be done about that institution.
And we're hearing that they also sold a $700,000 ranch and a $200,000 house, I think,
The house
as
that
well.
that they were in.
I probably shouldn't say how I know, but I found out recently that like a big conservative poster, like a meme, like right poster, that does like those meme posts on Twitter that are meant to be like, haha, so relatable, like 50%, and the other 50% are like conservative propaganda posts. That person who made that, who I'm thinking of here, and it could be a variety of people on your end, is a ranch owner. And when I found out about that, I was like, it's not end wokeness though. I was like, huh. How many of these Twitter accounts that you see, like how many of these conservative Twitter people are just like rural ranch owners? Because there are millions of Americans who are like multimillionaires living in giant houses on cheap land, that where they just have like a bunch of animals and shit and live in their little like sequestered little nation of them, and from there they like tweet about how wokeness is destroying the country. Like how many of those like lol so relatable meme account conservatives are tweeting from their like personal ranch?
And many prosecutors are questioning how they were able to get that money, whether those kids played a role in forced labor to pay for those things.
I mean, we don't know, but it would seem so. Like they had no source of income that the judge knew about. So how are you making this type of money? They're enslaving people. Yeah. You know, they're trafficking kids. You know, they think it's 1824, not 2024. And like Chow said, we have to start at the root and fix some of the problems that people are having that lead to this situation, because there's no child that should be. These kids are going to be traumatized for life. And the excuses that they use, oh, it was a clubhouse. When I was a teenager, I didn't want nothing to do with a clubhouse. I wanted to hang out with my friends and do normal things. That's elementary stuff. And the fact that the cops had to pry the door open. If that's a clubhouse, why can't they come and go? Right. I have friends that have clubhouses for their children. They can come and go as they please. So all of that is nonsense. They are enslaving people. And I've mentioned this before on this show. People think slavery ended in 1865 through convict leasing and other things. Black people have always had to deal with the possibility of being enslaved again.
Well, it's not even that. We like covered the. There was a really good video by. I'm blanking on his name right now. Knowing Better, I think. Yeah, neo-slavery. Yeah, that's the one, Galaxy Bomb. And it's the last slave that was like literally an American slave, not counting the prison system, which is legal slavery. It was the 1970s, wasn't it? All the way up till the 1970s, there were still slaves in America. That was a wild fucking reveal. Like, I actually, like, bumped to the bottom of my fucking desk. Oh, 1940s. I thought, okay, I mixed up why did I think 1970s? 1940s, regardless, still ridiculously recently. The fucking 1940s, dude. Holy shit. During World War II. During the World War II era is when we were actually coming out of slavery for real. Jesus Christ. That reveal is wild.
Now in 2024, we have kids having to go through things that my ancestors went through, and it's horrifying.
Last 30 seconds.
Maybe because that's when France banned the guillotine and I mixed them up. That makes sense.
14% of this country is a black population, yet 25% of all kids in the child welfare system.
I got really scared when she did, like, she was in the first half of 1350ing. I got scared.
Black. There's a serious racism problem in the foster care and the child welfare system.
All right. We want to thank you all for joining us here on The Factor.
Dude, what a horrific story. What an absolutely horrific story, but a reminder of the types of people out there that are voting Trump, that are wanting this fascistic rise in America and the destruction of our democracy, the kind of things they do when Trump's not in power, when they're not in control of the government. This is what they're up to now. Imagine if they are in power everywhere and in control of everything. Please vote. Anyway, if you liked what I had to say here, you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like. Every thumbs up really does go a long way to push my content in the algorithm, whether you're watching now or you're watching later, or no matter what, when, or where you're watching, please consider leaving a like. The thumbs up really do help. Thank you, thank you. And of course, please consider following my social medias linked down below, commenting and subscribing. And of course, don't forget to join my fan Discord, which is the free home of my fan base. It is the main hub, and I host watch parties, call-in streams, all sorts of cool stuff there, as well as watch parties. So hopefully you'll be there for the Avatar The Last Airbender watch parties. God, I'm sleepy. My outro's all fumbly today. And of course, if you want to support me directly, consider doing so by donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buying some, or buying some merch at the Streamlabs link down below. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.